Hello, welcome to FHE on the Road with Christine Stevenson. This podcast is designed to connect the people and the places from the past with your lives today, with 5-minute stories and facts from church history. Save these stories for when you are traveling through these areas to bring history to life. Okay, welcome back to FHE on the Road with Christine. Today I'm going to tell one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard in my life, and it is about a girl named Ella Jensen. And it happened in Brigham City, Utah. And it's incredible. So hopefully you love it too. It is amazing. It was March 3rd. Oh, and you can find this account. It was published in the Improvement era from September to October 1929. So that is where it's documented for all to find. It was March 3rd, 1891, when a young girl named Ella Jensen from Brigham City was on the brink of death. She was only 19 years old and had contracted scarlet fever. Her friend, Leah Reese, was serving as her night nurse, and it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when Leah reports and says, quote, "I was suddenly awakened by Ella calling me to get a comb, a brush, and scissors. She explained that she wanted to brush her hair and trim her nails and get all ready, for, she said, they are coming to get me at 10 o'clock this morning. I asked who was coming to get her. Uncle Hans Jensen and the messengers, she replied. I'm going to die and they're going to come at 10 o'clock and get me and take me away. I tried to quiet her, saying that she would feel better in the morning if she would try to sleep. No, she said, I am not going to sleep anymore, but I'm going to spend all the time getting ready. She insisted that I get a comb, a hairbrush, and scissors, which I did, but she was so weak that she couldn't use them. As I was brushing her hair, she asked me to call her parents. I explained that they were tired and asleep and that it would be better not to disturb them. But Ella said, yes, she insisted, you must call them. I want to tell them now. The parents were called and they entered the room. The daughter told them that her Uncle Hans, who was dead, had suddenly appeared in the room while she was awake with her eyes open and had told her that the messengers would come there at 10 o'clock to conduct her into the spirit world. The father and mother feared the girl was delirious and tried to get her to be quiet and go to sleep. She knew their thoughts and said, I know what I'm talking about. No, I'm not going to sleep anymore. I know I'm going to die and that they are coming to get me. Ella realized the end was very near and summoned each one of her family to kiss and bid them goodbye. She called each one by name as they came to her bedside, but her brother Bud, who was out, had not returned. As it drew towards 10 o'clock, she felt she could not go until she had seen him. She was gasping for breath and exerted all her strength to hold on until Bud got back. Grandma Jensen arrived, and just as Ella had embraced and kissed her, Bud came in with Mrs. Nelson. Ella threw her arms around her brother's neck and kissed him and then fell back on the pillow, dead. It was just 10 o'clock. So that's pretty crazy. Ella's father left at once to report to President Snow and consult him regarding the arrangements for the funeral. Sister Nelson washed and laid Ella out, dressed her in clean linens, and Bud took the doctor back home, who had been called in this emergency. Meanwhile, news of her death spread about. It was towards noon when Jacob Jensen, Ella's father, reported to President Snow at the tabernacle service because it was more than a mile to town and he had to hitch up the horse to drive there. They returned together with Rutger Clausen, who was then the president of the Box Elder stake. After standing at Ella's bedside for a minute or two, President Snow asked if there was any consecrated oil in the house. All were greatly surprised. The oil was secured for him. They handed the bottle to Brother Clausen and asked him to anoint Ella, after which Brother Snow confirmed the anointing. So they all thought that was pretty crazy because, again, she died at around 10 and this is 12 o'clock. So she's been dead for 2 hours at least. Particularly impressive among others were these words that he used. Dear Ella, I command you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ to come back and live. Your mission is not ended. His voice was very commanding. Come back, Ella, come back. Your work on earth is not yet completed. Come back. You shall live to perform a great mission. Ella remained in her dead condition for more than an hour after President Snow administered to her, and more than 3 hours in all after she died. Her mother and father were sitting there watching by the bedside when all at once she opened her eyes, looked about the room, saw them sitting there, but she still looked for someone, and the first thing she said was, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is who? "Why, Brother Snow," she replied. "He called me back." They explained to her that Brother Snow and Brother Clausen were very busy and could not remain, and that they had gone. Ella then dropped her head back in the pillow, saying, "Why did he call me back? I was so happy. I did not want to come back." Then Ella Jensen began to relate her marvelous experience. Marvelous both as to incidences themselves and to the great number of them that occurred in a short space of time between 3 and 4 hours. And furthermore, the very nature of these incidences proved that she was telling nothing but the truth. So this is, quote, "At 10 o'clock, my spirit left my body," related Ella. "It took me some time to make up my mind to go, as I could hear and see the folks crying and mourning over me. It was very hard for me to leave them, but as soon as I had a glimpse of the other world, I was anxious to go, and all the care and worry left me. I entered a large hall. It was so long that I could not see the end of it. It was filled with people. As I was conducted through the throng, the first person I recognized was my grandpa, H.P. Jensen, who was sitting in one end of the room writing. He looked up and seemed surprised to see me. He said, "Why, there's my granddaughter, Ella." He was very much pleased to greet me, and he continued with his writing. I passed on through the room and met with a great many of my relatives and friends. It was like going along a crowded street in a large city where you meet many people, only very few of whom you recognize. Some seemed to be in family groups, as there were only a few whom I could recognize and who knew me. I kept moving on. Some inquired about their friends and relatives on earth. Among the number was my cousin. He asked me how the folks were getting along, and he said it grieved him to hear that some of the boys were using tobacco, liquor, and many other things that were injurious to them. This proved to me that the people on the other world know a great extent of what happens here on the earth. The people were all dressed in white or cream. Everybody appeared to be perfectly happy. I was having a very pleasant visit with each one that I knew. Finally, I reached the end of the room, and I opened the door and went into another room filled with children. They were all arranged in perfect order, the large ones in the back row, all around the room. They seemed to be convened in a sort of primary or Sunday school, which was presided over by Aunt Eliza R. Snow. There were hundreds of small children there. It was, continued Ella, while I was standing and listening to the children singing, gladly meeting kindly greeting, that I heard President Snow call me. He said, "Sister Ella, you must come back, as your mission is not yet finished here on earth." So I spoke with Aunt Eliza R. Snow and told her that I must go back. Returning through the large room, I told the people I was going back to earth, but they seemed to want me to stay with them. I obeyed the call, although it was very much against my desire, as such perfect peace and happiness prevailed there, no suffering and no sorrow. I was so taken up with all I saw and heard that I did hate very much to leave that beautiful place. It has always been a source of comfort to me. I learned by this experience that we would not grieve too much of our departed loved ones, and especially at the time they leave us. I think we should be just as calm and as quiet as possible, because as I was leaving my mortal life, the only regret I had was that the folks were grieving so much for me. But as soon as I forgot all about the world in my delight with the other, for more than 3 hours my spirit was gone from my body. As I returned, I could see my body lying on the bed and folks gathering around the room. I wanted to stay only a short time on earth to comfort them. End of quote. So it goes on, the article goes on to say, Ella frequently told of the terrible suffering that she experienced when the spirit again entered the body. There was practically no pain on leaving the body in death, but the intense pain was almost unbearable in coming back to life. Not only this, but for months and even years forward, she experienced new aches and pains and physical disorders that she had never known before. Ella described as having met in the spirit where her aunts and second cousins long since died and laid away before she was born. She told her Aunt Harriet Waite, who had lost 2 daughters, not to mourn for them, for she had seen them and had talked to them, and they were very happy in their new sphere of existence. Many relatives and others visited Ella. She told them the same story of how she had met their relatives and friends over there, how happy they were, and how they had asked about their loved ones here. When Leah Reese, her night nurse, came to stay with Ella the next night, she told her about having seen Leah's father and several others of the people who had passed away, as well as her own Grandpa Jensen, all of whom appeared very happy. One person Ella was puzzled about seeing in the spirit world was little Alfie, the son of Alfonso H. Snow. He had been there. He had been in her Sunday school class in the first ward, and she didn't know that he had just died. When she told her mother, she said, "Yes, Ella, little Alfie is dead too. He died early in the morning while you were very sick. We knew you loved him and that it would be a shock to you, so we did not tell you about his death." But nevertheless, she had recognized the little fellow happily singing among the children under the direction of Eliza R. Snow. It was while sitting there listening to those children that she heard a voice coming to her in commanding tones, apparently from a long distance, which said, "Come back, Ella, come back. Your work on earth is not yet completed." And although she had no desire to come back, but on the contrary felt determined to remain in the beautiful world, the voice was so authoritative in manner that it seemed to draw, yes, actually draw her spirit out of the room and back to her body. She felt compelled to follow it and return to earth, where she filled to the fullness of her life's mission on earth, becoming a mother in Israel and doing much of the glory of God and her own exaltation in the service of the Lord. She is now known as Mrs. Henry White of Brigham City, Utah. I couldn't believe how incredible that story was. I love hearing the power of the priesthood and that Lorenzo Snow knew that her mission wasn't done. And even though she had been dead for hours, she came back to life by the power of the priesthood because her mission was not yet done here on earth. And I think how much of her mission was telling this story and reassuring people who have friends and family on the other side, knowing they're okay and they're happy over there, and that our work over here is important and their work over there is important. And I love this story. I love that she came back to teach us about the other side. And I'm so thankful for the gospel of Jesus Christ and the power of the priesthood. I'm so thankful that we have that power here on earth today, and through that power, miracles come about. Anyways, so I hope you love this story too. I thought it was incredible. Thanks. Thank you for listening to FHE on the road today. We hope you enjoyed what you've heard. Please like, subscribe, and share with anyone who'd be interested in these stories. Thanks.